Good afternoon, Christina.
Hey, Lisa, how are ya?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Good. Always great to see you, my dear.
Always great to see you too. And you just got back from a fantastic trip to Japan, so I hope you found some
Yes.
good baking over there for us.
Oh my goodness, amazing baking. I'm trying to compile a few photos and whatnot, and I'll be posting them shortly. But yeah, what an
Can't wait.
incredible country. Yeah, awesome. Fabulous people, fabulous food,
It's
super
amazing.
clean, amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I got to go one
highly
of these
recommend
days.
if you guys haven't been before.
Why didn't you bring me with you?
I just didn't have room in my carry-on. We travel by carry-on, so everywhere we go. So space is limited, Lisa. Maybe next
Yeah,
time.
that's true. I don't fit in a carry-on anymore.
Uh,
That's very unfortunate, but so what are you baking these days?
So I haven't had a chance to bake quite yet since I got back because we just got back on Saturday. But prior to leaving, I did make some homemade Italian bread, which was absolutely delicious. And in spite of the craziness of making it, because there were lots of stops and starts in between, some cold fermentation in there, they turned out absolutely amazing. So I was really, really pleased with that. And it was
That's
delicious.
awesome.
So I can't
Yeah,
live
I bet.
without bread though. So that would be one of the foods that if I had to choose a food that I could only eat for the rest of my life, bread would be it. And ideally with some cheese. How
Bread?
about yeah, bread. Good God,
Yeah,
yes.
bread and
Oh,
cheese. I mean, that's
yeah.
pretty
There's
ideal.
not much not much better. How about you?
Yeah.
What have you been baking lately? I know it's fast and furious wedding season, so
Yes, my friend Jessica is getting married this week, on Friday. And by the time we actually air this episode, she'll have been married for a little while. But
congratulations,
congratulations, Jessica.
Jessica.
I'm a bridesmaid. I'm also making the cake, and this cake has been testing me. It's been really testing me. I'm trying not to put it on her and tell her how much it's testing me. But I'm going to leave it at that and just say you'll find it as one of our fails in our baking craps segment soon. But by the time it gets on the table for that wedding day on Friday, it's going to be fantastic and tastes amazing. So,
It's going to be fabulous, fabulous. The flavor combination is incredible. It's
yes,
one of my favorites. The one that you're putting together for Jessica's
yes.
wedding cake, and I can't wait to see the beauty that you end up
Thank
producing.
you. I am excited about that. I'm looking forward to everybody tasting. It's an Irish car bomb cake. So a Guinness chocolate cake, and then we've got Irish whiskey chocolate ganache in between the layers, and then it's covered with
Mm,
white chocolate Bailey's ganache. So it's hard to work with, but very, very delicious.
amazing! It sounds spectacular, and like I said, that's one of my favorite combos to put together. And cooking, baking with whiskey
Mhm.
and Bailey's and all of those delicious flavors, it just adds that whole other dimension to the cakes
Yes.
and gives it so much more character. So I'm sure it's going to go over swimmingly.
I think so too. And I have to thank you because this Guinness chocolate cake recipe is courtesy of you and your research and your past experiences baking with it. So, thank you for passing that on. Thank you for sharing the baking scrap of doing half black cocoa and half regular cocoa. This Guinness chocolate cake, I mean, I was actually really excited that I had some fails with it because I got to eat it, and it is one of the most delicious cakes I've ever tasted in my life. So, thank you for that, Christina.
Oh, no worries. It's definitely one of my favorites that I bake on a it's on a regular rotation around our place and a favorite of a lot of our friends and family who request cakes. So yeah, it's a lot of fun to put together, and
Mhm.
it's easy too, right? It's just a couple extra little things in
Yeah.
there that add just that extra dimension of flavor and
Oh,
the
yeah.
dark
It's
rich
so,
color as
so
well.
good.
This stupendous.
It's so
Nice,
delicate and so moist.
good,
It's just delicious.
and that's what it's about. It's about sharing.
Yes. So, I appreciate that. Thank you.
As you know, we were talking bread is one of my favorite foods. So being gluten free is something that would be almost a curse, I think, for me. But I think if anybody could change my mind on that, it's our next guest, Caked by Katie Stymiest. And she is so well known for delicious, wonderful gluten-free and dairy-free bakes, and couldn't be more excited to have her on the show. We did a Ask Us Anything segment a little while back, and we had so many questions about gluten-free baking and everything around that. So I am super excited to chat with Katie, to pick her brain a little on how to make and get the most out of your gluten-free and dairy-free bakes. And yeah, just really looking forward to seeing her smiley face. She's just a joy on the internet. If anybody follows her, and if you don't,
Mm-hmm.
you should. Caked by Katie. Amazing personality, warm, friendly, generous with sharing tips and tricks. And yeah, it's going to be wonderful talking to her.
I know, I'm so excited. I just love Katie. I've been following her for quite a while, and we have gotten to know each other a little bit just outside of just the normal Instagram posts. And I think that the three of us are going to have a really great talk.
So I am so excited for our next guest, Katie Stymiest, who you might know as Caked by Katie. If you don't follow her on Instagram, you definitely should. This woman has been a godsend for me. My daughter-in-law is gluten-free, and so gluten-free baking was a challenge for me at the beginning before I actually came across Katie's Instagram handle, and she has saved me on so many occasions. And now I'm like, you know, liked as a mother-in-law, hopefully.
I'm sure you are.
She's, yeah, it's amazing. And probably one of my, I mean, all your cakes are tremendously delicious, and
And
nobody,
beautiful.
yeah, beautiful, and nobody could ever guess that they are gluten free, and in a lot of cases dairy free and even vegan as well. So like I said, thank you, Katie, for saving my relationship with my daughter-in-law. Appreciate that. I am so thrilled to have you here. Welcome to Baking Scraps, the sweet talk.
Welcome.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here with you ladies.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit, for the people who don't know you, just kind of explain what it is that you do as Caked by Katie on Instagram.
That's a really good question. What is it that I do on Instagram? I guess as Caked by Katie, I am sharing all of my baking recipes, my cake creations, my cookies, my bars, my squares, everything that's kind of a sweet treat. That's gluten free, dairy free, sometimes vegan. Um, that's kind of what I do.
And so when did you start doing that?
Well, I started baking when my oldest daughter was first born, and I was on maternity leave with her. And things just kind of evolved from there. And I realized how much I loved cake. So I kind of leaned in the cake direction. And I eventually started actually selling cakes, taking custom orders. And then right before COVID happened, I decided to no longer take custom orders and actually switch to blogging and sharing recipes. And then, gosh, I think a year after that, my oldest daughter was diagnosed as a celiac and was thrust into this world very unexpectedly of gluten-free
Right.
baking.
That's a challenge for sure.
It was eye-opening to
Yeah,
say the
I
least.
bet.
And it's great that people like you have come along to help open those doors for a lot of people, because I too was struggling with trying to figure out how to do, these great bakes, and it's come a long way, I think, in the last few years. And like I said, the work that you do to help promote and help develop those recipes so that us as common folk could actually be a good gluten-free baker. Like I said, it's meant the world to me, and I'm so thankful for
Mhm.
you as a baker, and even more so that you're so generous with sharing your talent and expertise with the rest of us.
Thanks. It's my joy to do it because I saw how hard of an adjustment it was for my daughter. I think she was 8 when she was diagnosed. So she'd grown up with me baking, and always, there was always a plate of cookies or a special birthday cake, always in the house. And all of a sudden, these are things that she can't eat for her, her health and her wellness. And I wanted to keep as much joy and quote unquote regular life for her as possible. And I want that for everybody, whether they're gluten free, they're dairy free, they're egg free, they're vegan, whatever, lifestyle or medical, dietary need they have, is for everybody to be included and feel special.
It does make such a huge difference, right? Because I find that too with, there's so many restrictions and people are either scared or they don't know or they don't understand the severity of people's intolerances
Yeah.
with gluten as well. And so I think, you know, again, having these resources available are so wonderful. And you've got a huge following on Instagram. I think you're over 165,000 followers. So obviously you found a great niche to promote that gluten-free and dairy-free baking and vegan as well. And so tell us about, you decided to become an IG influencer, and obviously you're doing lots of great things, right? Because that is a huge accomplishment. And so tell us about that journey from going from selling your cakes to moving on to the blogging and sharing your great skills.
Honestly, it's something that it's kind of dumb luck, perhaps. I don't know. I think social media is just this wild world, and it's amazing that, I mean, well, here we are right now. I would never have probably ran into you ladies, and we connected through Instagram, and that's amazing. You have these relationships and friendships now where you've never really met in real life. Um,
Which is
and I
weird.
think Instagram, it's so weird,
Like, I
right?
feel like
And
we're just down the street from each other. Like,
Yeah.
totally. And like
Well,
we found that, like, me and Cristina she was married to a man that grew up next door to where my dad grew up. And so they like had actually met each other.
yeah,
And
we're really close with our grandparents as well,
yeah,
and always heard all the stories about little Katie.
yeah.
So and here she
it's
is.
so amazing.
So it's just like, right. And just because of like a social media platform, it's just wild. And I think it's really cool to be able to utilize it to connect
Yeah.
worldwide. But honestly, it's just dumb luck on my part of maybe posting the right cake at the right time on the right day in the right color. I don't know.
Yeah, it really is
Well, your
weird.
cakes are stunning.
They are.
Yeah.
And I have to say also, because I know we've been talking a lot about just the whole idea of having the availability of the gluten-free, etc. recipes. But I just have to say that your recipe development, like, that is a real skill. How you manage to make everything taste good and have the right textures, because I know that if I need to make something gluten-free, dairy-free, etc. I all I have to do is go and look for one of your recipes, and I know it's going to be great every single time. And so I just want to thank you for
Mhm.
that, because I have lots of people who
Aw,
are like, "Thank you so much for making this for my daughter, sister, friend," and I have to thank you for it, because I know that I can absolutely find something that's going to be good if I'm looking at your page. So
I appreciate it. There's nothing, well, I mean, anytime you think, even just a handful of years ago, gluten free, vegan, dairy free, any of that, I mean, it had such a bad
yeah,
rap, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Like you would go to a gathering or whatever, and you would purposely avoid the gluten free
Mhm.
cookies because it would just be like eating
Dust.
dust. You know? So, or you'd have a slice of vegan cake and it would just be like this gummy, dense ball of flour. Um, and it's just a joy to tell people and show people, like, no, I promise it really is good. Like, it really does taste like real cake.
Do you ever not tell people that
Absolutely.
it's gluten free and just wait until, yeah,
All the time. I will rarely like label my stuff gluten free, dairy free, unless of course if
needs to
there's a
be, yeah.
medical thing I
Mhm.
need to. Um, but actually, I send my my girls treats to school for their birthdays. Like we'll do cupcakes or cookies or whatever. And my older daughter actually specifically will ask, can you just send me something like gluten-free for me and then regular for the rest of the class? Because the class, they say they don't like gluten-free.
Right.
So I'm like, sure, babe. I do it all gluten-free. It's all the exact same. I just make sure hers is labeled different. It's all the exact same, and they all eat it. And it's just like, sure, you guys don't like gluten-free.
It's so true though. It's so true. I mean, even the stuff that I've baked for my family and relatives, and we have a niece who's vegan as well. So sometimes we're doing the vegan gluten-free 2-for-1 kind of cake, and it's actually, and then I'll do like some other regular desserts. And honestly, anytime I've used a Cake by Katie recipe, people are actually more drawn to the vegan gluten-free one than the other dessert that I've brought most of the time.
And
So
like it's a
it's,
sneaky win.
Yeah.
You're kind of like,
oh, I know. It's like, it's fabulous, right? And people are like, there's no way this is. I'm like,
That's the best.
it's fabulous. So
Yeah, the biggest compliment when someone was like, I never would have guessed that was gluten-free. Huge compliment.
yeah, that's the biggest compliment
Yes.
for sure.
Yes. It's excellent.
Yeah.
Is gluten-free healthier?
No.
I mean, you still put as much
It's
sugar
healthier
in
if
it.
you're celiac.
Yeah.
It's healthier if you're intolerant. No, it's not healthier. It's the same. I mean, you're still using your sugar and your butter and your milk and your everything else.
Yeah.
it's just the flour.
Yep, it's just without gluten.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Now, one of the things that people complain about gluten-free baking is that it doesn't stay fresh as long as regular baking. Can you tell us maybe why that is, and if you have any tips or tricks on how to extend the life of your gluten-free baking? Not that you would need to, because most of the time
It
it
gets
goes
eaten.
anyway, but just in case you had some left over.
So gluten-free baking does tend to dry out faster than, quote unquote regular. That's just due to the property of gluten. So what you want to do for any gluten-free baking is you need to really make sure to have a solid fat source in your baked good. And this is going to provide extra moisture to keep that flour hydrated. Gluten-free flour blends are typically going to be oat blends, rice, starches like potato starch, cornstarch. These are typically drier flours, thus pulling the moisture more so and absorbing that quicker than a regular all-purpose, a cake flour, that sort of thing. And so you want to make sure you have a really solid fat source to keep that moisture. You're also going to want to make sure that you are, airtight container, less exposure to the air as long as possible. I always keep mine in the fridge. I won't keep them at air temperature. I'll just let them come back to room temperature before serving. Also for cookies, if you don't want dry cookies, it's the same trick as regular cookies. When you store it in an airtight container, take a loaf of or a slice of gluten-free bread, pop that into the container with the cookies, and those cookies are going to absorb the moisture. They're going to pull it from the bread and keep it in the cookies, and they're going to stay really nice and soft.
I
Oh,
never knew that
interesting.
trick.
I've never heard that. Obviously, that's a great trick for brown sugar
Yep.
and keeping your brown sugar moist, but I never heard that for cookies. So that is such a great tip.
I love it. It's fantastic.
Nice. I love it.
Do you
That alone was worth having you on the show.
It works with anything, like even like if you're worried about cupcakes, if they're been out, or if you're gonna have them for a couple to 2 or 3 days or whatever, throw a slice of bread in there, a gluten-free slice of bread, and you're good.
That is amazing.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Love that.
It's really
It
neat.
really
And the
is.
bread, when you open it up in the morning, the bread is like dry and shrivelly and
But your cupcakes, your cookies are going to be super moist and
moist.
delicious. That is awesome. I love that.
Can you freeze gluten-free bakes the same as you would freeze regular?
Absolutely. You can freeze a gluten-free bake the exact same as a regular bake. I always just recommend a really slow thaw. So the night before you want to serve it, enjoy it, eat it, put it in the fridge overnight, let it thaw really slow, and then bring it out the next day when you're ready to serve.
Awesome. And then once it's at room temperature, then how long do you suggest having it? Like in terms of making sure that the quality is going to be, great still.
I would say 24 hours at room temperature, and then you should
Okay.
probably pop it in the fridge or pop it in the freezer.
Okay. Nice. That's
Now,
awesome.
what fat
Now, in
sources?
terms of, oh,
I'm sorry, I keep thinking of other
go ahead.
questions. No, it's fine. You go ahead, Christina. Stick to the
No, this
regularly
is
scheduled
great.
program.
This is okay. So, actually, great question on the fat source. Actually, do you have a favorite fat source? You said that was going to be really, really important.
Yes, butter. I mean, I'm
Butter.
a butter girl through and
Mhm.
through. It is just a great fat source, and not to mention just the flavor of it, right? Like
Mhm.
anytime you're going to have that delicious buttery flavor in any baked good, it's pretty much a win. I typically will do a combination of butter and oil.
Mhm.
And that's going to give the nice fat source, and it's also going to help with moisture and a really nice texture. Which again, gluten-free baking can struggle with texture as well.
Yes.
As well. Um, the only time is like some typical baking, you can take, butter out and swap it with applesauce or mashed bananas to, healthify things. And that's when you're going to really start to see baked goods drying out,
Mhm.
is when you get rid of that fat
Fat.
source.
So, don't be afraid to use that fat source
Yep.
in the baking. Is what I'm hearing from
Yep.
you.
You have
Yeah,
to, unless you are okay with having something a little bit dry.
Dryer.
makes
I have a
sense.
question.
Awesome.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Comes
Um,
number one.
the when you're using butter, obviously you can't if you're going to be trying to make a gluten-free, dairy-free bake. So what is your favorite substitute for butter? And does that still have the same sort of fat attributes?
Okay, so again, in the last few years, dairy free has come leaps and bounds. Even from when I was a kid, the dairy free options were pretty much nothing.
Soy
You just
milk.
didn't have dairy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, back then,
Hmm.
soy had such a bad rap too, right?
Yeah.
So, um, honestly, for all my baking, whether I'm actually baking dairy free or not, I use dairy free butter. You can
Oh,
find dairy free butter in lots of different forms. So you can find it in a spreadable form, much like a soft margarine.
yeah.
What I recommend, though, always for any type of baking, your cookies, cakes, bars, your frostings, you want to find dairy free butter in the brick form. When you use a soft spreadable kind, you're going to end up with a runny icing. You're going to end up
Right.
with flat cookies, gummy cakes. So you'll want to just grab that brick form in your dairy free butter. But there are so many different brands out now and so many
Mhm.
alternatives. And they have lots of different like plant based ones that you can find that, fits your preferred method. Whether it's avocado or canola or sunflower, coconut, lots of these alternatives. They each have a little bit of a different flavor. And
Mhm.
I always go with the salted dairy free butter. And
Hmm.
now that, I mean, it's all I've had pretty much my entire life is dairy free butter. So it tastes like butter to me. And
Hmm.
again, I feed it to everybody who gets anything from
Yeah,
me. And nobody mentions
they
it
like it.
not being regular butter. Yeah.
It's perfect. So most of what you bake is going to be automatically dairy free.
Yep. Yep. Always dairy free. My whole family's dairy free except for my daughter that's a celiac. She can have dairy. Thankfully.
Ironic.
So literally anything that is dairy free. Yeah.
Yeah, there are so many great options right now, and I know one of my favorites is the Basel, plant based
The
as well,
basil, yeah.
in the salted. And I agree with you. I think any substitution I've ever done with that one
No.
comes out. You can't even tell in the
Yeah.
bakes. They've done
Absolutely.
It
such a nice
does
job
make
on
for a
those.
very soft buttercream,
Yep. It is a little bit of softer.
the
So it
basil.
has
Yeah,
does it technically mean, does it have a lower or a higher melting point? It means a lower melting point, right? I think that's how the science works of it. It's a lower
I
melting point.
think
Um,
so.
So
Yeah.
when working with it, just know, especially if you're going to make a dairy-free cream cheese buttercream, Because again, the dairy-free cream
Mm.
cheese is going to have that lower melting point, so
Soft.
it's going to be softer.
Yeah.
Always,
Soft,
the
soft,
fridge
soft.
is your friend. The fridge is your friend. So if any point you're using a frosting and it feels a little soft, you're piping, and you know when the lines aren't quite as crisp anymore, stop what you're doing, put everything in the fridge, give it a chill, take your time. 15 minutes is good
Mhm.
enough. Bring it back out, work, feel soft again, put it back in the fridge.
Nice. I
Perfect.
love all these. These are so amazing and I think so helpful for so many people, Katie. So thank you for again being so generous with sharing your tips with us and helping us along because I think especially as people are doing more transitional baking, like going from the traditional eggs and butter
Mhm.
and regular flour and trying out all these new techniques or new bakes with using the gluten-free and the dairy-free. It can be very daunting out there.
Mhm.
So anytime, and it's going to be a little different from what you're used to as well with traditional butter or regular flour.
Mhm.
So all of this is so helpful for
Good, I'm
everybody.
glad.
So thank you.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
So Lisa, and I agree with her. I think one of the brilliant things that you do is all in your recipe development. And again, being so gracious with sharing those recipes with everybody. So can you just like if you had a regular recipe that you were looking at, can you just sub in regular like a one-to-one flour in pretty much any recipe, or what are some of the things that people should watch out for or be aware of
Let's get into the
when
science
maybe
here
taking one
because
of
this
their
is the
favorites?
science thing.
Okay.
Yeah, your favorite recipe that's been handed down for generations or whatever, and you want to try making it gluten free. What would you recommend some of those steps be for somebody who wants to try to transition them into a gluten free
Sure. To
option?
convert a recipe, not all recipes are created the same. So not all recipes are going to convert the same, unfortunately. Unfortunately, we can't just take one principal model and take it from here to there and use that for every single recipe. It's not going to work, unfortunately. So let's say you have great grandma's chocolate chip cookie recipe. It is loved, cannot be beat, but we need to make it gluten free now because Auntie Betty is celiac. What I would suggest is just taking a look at that recipe. What you're going to want to see is again, okay, what's the fat source here? Do we have a solid fat source? Okay, yeah, we got some butter, we have some oil, it's got, coconut oil, whatever it is. And then if it's not a huge recipe, if it doesn't make, 10 dozen cookies, I suggest trying it with a gluten-free 1-to-1 baking blend. So when you're going to switch for gluten-free flours, there are 100 of them on the market. You're going to see strictly, rice flours. You're going to see oat flours. You're going to see almond flours. You're going to see coconut flours, all these different ones. If this is your first time experimenting with gluten-free, please, please, please get yourself a gluten-free 1-to-1 baking blend. And then what that means is that flour has been crafted with a bunch of these blends already mixed in to give the best balance of all these combinations to create a baked good that is going to be similar to a glutinous flour. And what you're going to look for in that blend is something called xanthan gum. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. Don't ask me to spell it. And xanthan,
That was going to be
oh
our next
no,
question for you.
fail, fail. I know it starts
Yeah.
with an X, and there's like 2 N's and maybe a silent
X
M
A
or
N
something.
T H A N.
There you go. Lisa
It's an
wins.
N at the end. Yeah.
Shut down the show.
I
She
like
wins.
spelling.
Um,
Start
so
again.
you want to look for a blend that already contains that xanthan gum. What xanthan gum is the metaphorical glue for gluten-free baking, because gluten is the elasticity, it's the connector, it's the stretch in flour. That's what
Mhm.
holds things together. And gluten-free blends don't have that. And so if you've ever bitten into something that's gluten-free and it just is powder basically in your mouth, It's because they didn't have a binder to keep it together. So you're going to look for a blend with xanthan gum in it. You can also look for something with sorghum gum in it. That sometimes xanthan gum is just more widely available. You're going to see that a lot more often than sorghum. You're going to want that, and then you can use that. It says literally in its title, 1-to-1. So if your recipe has 2 cups of flour, you're going to use 2 cups of that gluten-free 1-to-1 flour blend. Try that in your recipe and give it a go. See how it turns out. Also, a tip for when you're baking gluten-free. Specifically, I have noticed most with cookies, but even with cakes and everything else, is your baking time is going to vary.
Mm.
So your recipe says bake cookies for 10 minutes. I'm going to start with 8 minutes. And I'm going to pull them out and I'm going to see. Because as soon as something is even a little bit overbaked, gluten-free, it's going to be so dry. So
Mm-hmm.
you're better off, especially with cookies, bars, brownies, to underbake it a little bit and let just that natural heat and convection from the pan that it's on to finish off that
Continue.
last little bit of
Yeah,
baking.
continue the process.
Then to keep it in the oven. Yeah. So you're going to
Yeah.
want to keep an eye on that really, really close.
And do you bake it at the same temperature that the recipe suggests?
I do. I know that there are some other gluten-free bakers that like to drop it down a little bit. So let's say
Mm-hmm.
most temps are cookies and cakes are 350 usually, right? Sometimes they'll drop it down to 325. And again, just making sure to keep an eye on that baking time. Another trick for specifically if you're recreating a recipe for a cake or a muffin, you're going to let that batter sit for a little bit. So usually cakes, they're like, okay, you make your batter, put it in the oven right away. When you let a gluten-free batter sit, again, it's going to absorb some of that moisture and going to help create a little bit better of a texture, a
Right.
little bit more spring, a little bit more bounce, a little bit more rise in your cakes and muffins. So if you're going to recreate a recipe like that, it won't hurt to just let your batter sit on the counter for 10, 15, 20 minutes, then put it in your tins, trays, whatever, and bake it then.
That's
Perfect.
awesome.
Yeah,
And that again, I mean, how invaluable is this
it's
information
amazing.
for everybody who's attempting to do
Yeah.
gluten-free baking? It's fabulous. Convection versus a regular
Mm.
conventional oven, because convection sometimes will dry things out a
Yeah.
little bit. Do you have any recommendations there?
I used to be a convection girl through and through. You could not convince me to not bake things on convection. And the beginning part of learning gluten free, I just couldn't figure out what the heck was going on. I was under baking things, they were overbaked and whatever. And so I finally switched to not convection. And like my mom raised me, you don't need any other button but that convection baked button. And since figuring that out, I don't thing on convection anymore. Yeah.
Okay, so just a regular
I
Just
conventional
regular
oven.
conventional. If you find that your oven, when you do just bake regular, sometimes I'll have a little hot spot. What I typically do is most things I'll flip them halfway through.
Makes
Even
sense.
with
Yep.
cakes?
Even with cakes, I will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't flip
So
them. Just
Nice.
turn the
don't like,
pan around.
Just you're not like doing
yeah.
that.
What
So take them
happened?
out. Um, Pans, like, this side goes, scoots them down and then swap the pan around and, just do a little
Makes
dance
sense.
and a
Just
hope
swirl it
and
around.
I have to use convection for
Nice.
everything because we moved into this house. This is a rental house that we're living in right now, and the racks don't fit properly in the oven because I guess the
Oh
sides of the
no.
oven had expanded at some point. I don't even know how that happens. So the rack would just like if I put something in there, it would like bang, like just fall down on one side. So my
Oh
husband
no.
stretched the rack so that it is in there, and I cannot move any of the racks in my oven. So I always have to use convection because I've got one 2/3 of the way up and one 1/3 of the way up, and that's it. Can't move.
that's it. No
That's it.
choice. This is this is your life now. You are
I guess
stuck
I'm a
with this.
convection girl now. And I never used to be a convection girl. Never ever baked anything convection. And now I'm like, okay, I guess I have to do that at 10 degrees less than convection.
Yeah, totally. It
Yeah.
took me a while too to realize that, like, oh, convection like bakes faster and hotter, and things need a little bit more time now, and it takes a little bit of a curve.
Yes,
Hmm.
it's a very
See,
big learning curve.
I'm the other way. I've always just used a conventional oven for the most part. Very rarely will I use convection for
Oh
anything.
goodness, it's so
So,
funny
yeah.
how you just
Yeah.
get used to one thing, and then all of a sudden you're like, I don't really want to change, and I don't know what I'm doing anymore.
So, do you take recipes that are existing out in the world and then create gluten and dairy free recipes from them? Or do you have these like basic chemical formulations and different processes for, the creaming process, the reverse creaming, the blah, blah, blah? Do you have that all in your head and just say, okay, I want a cake that's this flavor. Let's just experiment with that. And how much do you go through ingredients wise to get that done? Like, just tell us your process because I have so many questions about this. I get bored after 2 tries.
So it's, you know what? It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Um, basically, when I have a new idea, I have a new flavor combination, a big overarching concept of what I want to create. If it's something that I know I already have in my repertoire, like if it's a spin on a shortbread cookie, let's say, I'm going to go back to my base shortbread cookie recipe that I know works. And then from there, I'm going to use that as like my foundation, my
Right.
building block.
Yeah.
And then I'm adding in this flavor. Okay, so I'm adding in this flavor. It's a wet ingredient. So I need to now balance it with another wet ingredient, but it's an acid. So where am I going to bring in the base? And I'm knowing like, okay, this is what my baking powder is doing. This is what my soda is doing. This is how much of a binder I'm going to need because I'm using 3 cups of flour. So it's a little bit of all that. And it's playing around. And I kind of think of it as like a puzzle. Like these are all pieces. And I need to make sure that all these pieces are going to match together and that at the end, they all balance each other out. Um, yeah, that's kind of how I do it for recipes, if that makes sense.
That's amazing to me.
I've go back and study like what the science is behind ingredients.
Yeah.
Like what is the purpose of sugar? Like it's more than just adding sweetness to something.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with adding like substitutes for, dairy, for gluten, for eggs and stuff,
Yeah.
finding out the science behind these different ingredients, how they're going to affect other ones, and making those puzzles fit and making sure they balance each other out.
So,
And so sometimes I nail it on the first time, and those are great days, and I feel brilliant and on top of the world. And then there are some recipes that usually after the 4th time, if I still can't figure it out, I'm like, I need a break. I'm going to
yeah.
set that one to the side. And there are still some recipes that
Hmm.
I come back to try and nail, that I'm always working on, because gluten-free flour is so gosh darn expensive.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
I do
Mm.
have to say, like, okay, maybe this is not the time now to try and solve this one problem on this one specific cake flavor. I need to move
Wow.
on to the next. Because otherwise, yeah, it
Hmm.
can get super expensive because,
Yep.
a little bag of flour is $12, and, I
Yeah.
take a whole bag for a
Yeah.
cake. And if I have to bake it 5 times, it's a lot of money.
Yeah. No kidding.
Absolutely.
Oh gosh, I have so many more questions. I'm like, I don't want to go into our game yet because I still have more questions because we didn't ask you about your TV shows. And I want to ask you about the
Yes.
TV shows. Right, Christina? We didn't write that in
Sure.
our list of questions.
Absolutely.
So, some people might not know, Katie, that you were actually on not one, but 2 different TV shows. Is that correct?
Yes, it was. It was 2
Tell
shows,
us
and they
all
were
about it. I
Yeah.
watched them. Yeah,
Me
that would
too.
have
did you?
been.
Aw.
Yeah.
The first one I did was a couple years ago, and it was with Food Network, and it was called The
Hmm.
Big Bake. They're, you know, bigger than life, extraordinary, over the top, sensational cakes that are all in a theme, and you have a team and you're competing against other teams, and it's timed, and it's kind of like, a pressure cooker situation. But that was a blast. It was so fun. So I went with two local girls here in my town. We flew to Vancouver. We got to do a holiday edition, and it was, what was the title of it? Oh goodness. It
Let's
was a
find out.
Christmas, something about
Hmm.
reindeer sports, reindeer
Reindeer
games, reindeer
games.
games.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what it was. Reindeer games. I think it was season 2. And we did reindeer games, and we did this. We totally like swipped it, or
It's okay.
swapped,
You're just having a Lisa Spoonerism moment.
swapped the theme, and we thought these reindeer needed to get out of the snow, and so we took them down to the beach, and they were playing beach volleyball, and it was a blast. I had the girls that I went with are just the most amazing girls, and we giggled and laughed and made a massive cake, and it was fun.
Tell us about that experience, because that is so unlike what most bakers would ever do, right? So what,
Yeah.
and you do these absolutely beautiful aesthetics of cakes and bakes and that kind of stuff. But generally the character cakes, I haven't seen a lot of that on your page. So why and how did you make that decision to think this would be a really cool experience, obviously, but to do that, and your role as being part of the team, in order to come up with this crazy creation? And how much time did you know ahead of time what the theme was going to be, or um, how did that all work? Because we don't see the behind the scenes of what goes on with, especially things like the Big Bake, or Is It Cake, or any of these like wild, like transformational character, bigger than life kind of creations.
Yeah. We found the theme, gosh, I want to say maybe a month before we headed there. And so we had that time to plan. So
Hmm.
what we had to do is we had to sketch our design idea. And we always had to send it into the team, and they, had to approve our design. They had to approve our different elements, because we had a spinning crab, we had a floating ball, and blinking tree lights. And so they have to approve all these different elements. We have to meet certain requirements. It had to be 3 feet by 3 feet in minimum. Um, and it had to be like a certain different kinds of flavors. And they had different technical surprise bakes kind of thing that you had to
Right.
get everything
Incorporated.
for.
Hmm.
Yeah, so all of that, we had to plan all that out. So we would always meet as a team and kind of brainstorm these ideas and sketch it out. And we each um, kind of assigned roles to each of us in the team. So again, I'm not a fondant girl. Like, that is not my forte. Give me buttercream and I will do whatever. But fondant, no, I'm not good at it. Um, so I got like the best role on the team. I got to be like the actual baker. So I got to create the flavors. I create, like, bake the cakes, bake the cupcakes, make the frostings, do the fillings, all that. Like, that's my jam. Like, I'm all about the flavor and that. So I got to just be in my happy place in the back kitchen and doing all that.
This is perfect. And was it all gluten-free?
No, I wasn't gluten free at that. Well, I'm not technically gluten free, but I wasn't a gluten free baker at that time. But fun, it was dairy free. Oh no, because they give you the butter,
Oh,
but I
right.
used all my dairy free recipes.
And then the
Yeah.
It
other
was
one that you
fun.
were
It
on
was
was
a
called
blast.
must have been
Cooks
amazing.
at all
Yeah,
Cook
costs.
at
cook
all
at all costs,
costs. Yeah.
and it was a Netflix one.
And that was crazy because you had like a budget
Yep.
that you were given for ingredients.
Yeah, we were given
So,
our bank allowance, our budget, and then we had to blind bid on these box of mystery ingredients. And we were just basically told one box is like your premium ingredients.
Hmm.
The middle box is middle of the road mystery surprise box. And then the bottom box was like your lower budget friendly options. And so you bid on these boxes. You know, you have the big 1, 2, 3, and everybody lifts the box lid off, and that's your ingredients. And now cook us something with this.
And you had a couple of, like, for your finale bake on that one, you had like the weirdest ingredients,
So weird.
but you knocked it out of the park. Because can we do a little spoiler here?
Yeah, go for it.
So Katie won her episode,
I did.
like crazy, with the lowest. I think you just decided to go big or go home and go for that lowest budget.
I went for the mystery box.
Mystery,
So it
yeah.
was just the mystery box always had like really random surprise ingredients, which ended up being like we spoiled it, right? So I can say what it is. It was,
I mean, it
should
aired
I
a
say
long
what it
time
is?
Sure.
Chicken hearts. And then in the other one, it was barbecue theme. So the other people got these like beautiful cuts of meat, and I had a block of tofu. Yeah, so it was a fun.
But you like slayed it, girl. Like totally slayed it for both of them, and especially the chicken liver one. Because had you even cooked chicken livers before?
Chicken hearts?
No, never. I've never even seen them. That was
Or
chicken
chicken
hearts.
hearts?
Never
Yeah.
seen them.
Chicken
Never
hearts,
cooked with
sorry.
them. Never ate them. Nothing. I just remember like opening it and being like, "Oh my lord, what do I do?"
And that one's available on Netflix, right? So people can go find that one and watch
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Fun.
was awesome. It was so
Fun.
much fun because I mean, we had connected in that very like remote Instagram way at that point. So I knew who you were, and probably you had no idea who I was at the time. So we didn't have any kind of like friendship like we do now. But I remember watching it. I'd be like, I know her. I know. Oops, my I just pulled my headphones out. I was so excited. Oops. I know her.
And it is actually, and it's super exciting when you actually know somebody, and even if you just know them through this crazy world of social media. But I think you feel like those
Mhm.
connections, especially with other bakers as well, and the community. And we've spoken about this before on the show. The baking community online is just so incredibly supportive. They're beautiful people, inside and out, incredible talent, and so much generosity. And so it is super exciting when you actually, have somebody. I mean, you're one of the pages that I look at
Yep.
every day, just because you're so inspirational with what you do, and your bakes are so gorgeous and beautiful. So yeah, when Lisa said, when you know somebody that's somebody that's on one of these shows, it's like you're like rooting for you, and
Right?
just so much fun to watch.
And you're like telling your friends and family, like, they're my friend. I know them. Like, I know them. Watch them. Yeah, I get it. I'm the same way. It's
Totally.
neat.
It's so much fun, and it really just adds a whole other dimension to enjoying the show, and seeing the creativity, and being, my mind was blown watching you,
Yeah,
especially on Cook at All Costs. That was just
it was a
crazy.
blast. It was a blast. Next, well, when we do meet in real life, I'll make you guys some chicken hearts.
Is it a staple of your dinner time now?
You know what's funny? I have not made chicken hearts yet since that show. And I still need to. Like, my family have refused that they would ever eat them. And so I'm just going to have to like pull one over on them.
Yes.
Much like the gluten-free stuff. I'm just going to have to make a dish, not even tell them that it's chicken hearts, and feed it to them. And I'll report back and let you know what they
Sounds
say.
good.
I think that would be awesome, and I think we'd be into being those guinea pigs for you as well. I think,
as long as like I serve it with some dessert.
Yeah. Oh, for
exactly.
sure. I think
one of your beautiful
I
cakes.
think we have to do like a potluck dessert thing. We all bring kind of like one of our specialties. Yeah.
Yes.
That'd be fun.
And so, what would that be for you, Katie?
Oh, like what specialty I would bring?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so hard. I would literally want to bring everything. But
We'd be okay with
Yeah,
that.
we would. As long as we get our chicken hearts.
Okay, it's a tough call between either like my go-to classic chocolate chip cookie recipe
Mm.
or my Nanaimo bar cake.
Nanaimo bar cake.
Yeah.
I was wondering when Nanaimo bars would come into the conversation, because I think you're a self-proclaimed Nanaimo bar addict.
Through and through. Like, take me to the 12-step program. I am a full addict. They run through my veins. I love them.
That's so cute.
Now,
I
are you a
don't like
purist when it
Nanaimo
comes
bars.
to your Nanaimo
I'm
bars?
sorry.
No,
You just haven't had the right
don't
one.
be sorry, because Nanaimo bars, like you go to your store, you go to the bakery, whatever,
Yeah.
they are so sweet. They're so sweet.
That's
Like
true.
they almost
Yeah.
give you like that, like make your teeth hurt. They're so sweet.
Yeah.
I refuse to make Nanaimo bars like that.
Mm-hmm.
You need to make sure you balance that sweetness of that buttercream custard filling with like I add super crunchy, salty cashews to the base
Oh,
to
nice.
get a dark chocolate ganache on top. You need some coarse sea salt on top to like really elevate it and cut way back on the sugar, because otherwise it's too much.
I will try your
I
Nanaimo
will
bar
change
cake.
Nanaimo bar.
You will.
I promise you.
Okay, it sounds good. I can't wait now. All right, you know what time it is?
Time for a game.
Yes.
Time
time.
for this or that.
Okay.
And this is the gluten-free edition.
All right.
Somewhat.
Somewhat.
All right.
Do you want
All
to
right, Cristina, you start
it off? Okay.
Because I lost my list of questions.
You lost your list?
No, I found it. Got it.
Awesome. All right. Homemade or a pre-made gluten-free flour?
Pre-made.
Just because it's easier, or is it less expensive?
It is easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eventually I'll probably do homemade. I'm not there yet where I'm confident in my separate flour knowledges on the right balance. And for my life in the stage I'm in right now, it is just way easier to do pre-made.
Convenience
and
is key.
There's so many amazing options as well out there. So
they're really
yeah.
Well, you got a delivery of your favorite gluten-free flour the other day.
I did.
You posted it. You were like, "Oh, the best flour!"
It's Exo Baking. They're from the States, and her flour is it's so soft. It's like silk. I'm in love with it.
That's
It's a beautiful blend. She does a phenomenal job.
Nice. Oh, Lisa.
So how much of that do you buy at a time? Because you go through like a bag
amount.
every time. Yeah, I was going to say.
I think that shipment was, I don't know how many pounds each box is. It was like 12 boxes, at least 12 pounds, probably 24 pounds. I go through a lot. It's kind of embarrassing.
Enough to qualify for free shipping, right?
Yeah, well, you have to, right? Especially when you're going through the States, you're like, well, gotta make it worth its while.
Exactly. That's how I am with like cake boxes. See, there's a big box behind there. Those are my large size cake boxes from Flour Confections, and I'm like, gotta get 10 of them. So they're so good. I love their stuff. I'm like, I have a shirt that says Team Flour on it that I got from them, and I love it.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yes. Okay, next question. Chocolate, white, dark, or milk?
Dark.
I knew you were going to say dark.
And that makes 100%. Sense because you have it's dairy-free in your household for the most part. So that makes total sense.
Totally. What a dumb question.
Now, we know... Sorry, I did that one. My bad.
Fired her.
So we know the other thing you really enjoy are donuts. And so do you prefer them with or without a hole?
Oh, without. Because then you can have a fill.
Yeah, I was going to say
and filled donuts are better than not filled donuts.
Good call.
I like filled donuts too. Yeah. I cannot read the next question, so I'm going to skip to the next one. Nanaimo bar. Oh, you already asked her if she was an original, a Nanaimo bar purist.
We didn't get an answer.
Original or flavored.
We didn't get an answer.
Bars.
Oh,
yeah, that's right.
That's a good question. I'm going to have to go with the original. Flavored is fun for a twist, but if given the choice, just take me to the classic original. Yeah.
So, gluten-free pizza crust, do you prefer it with a flour base or cauliflower?
Flour. 100% flour, but I actually prefer a thin crust flour base
Hmm,
because I like the crunch of a cauliflower, especially around the edges. But I mean, it's apples and oranges. Come on, if you're gonna have pizza, you gotta have it as a flour crust, right?
completely agree.
I'll have a salad on the side if I want some.
Yes. There we go. It's just whole pile of cauliflower on the side. Cakes
Yes.
or pies?
Oh, cakes, without question. I'm not a pie girl. I make them occasionally because my dad and my daughter really enjoy pie. So usually for their birthday, they'll request a pie. But that's it, really. I'll usually just like pass on a pie. It's just not my jam.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. And gluten-free pie crust can be a bit challenging as well.
Yep, it can be a bit challenging.
I found a really good recipe
Again,
for it.
yeah, you need to find a good recipe to get those flaky layers
Yes.
that pie crust is known for. It takes a bit of working,
And to
but
be able to roll it out,
yeah,
because
it
it's
can be done.
really, really hard to find a recipe where you can actually
Mm,
roll out the pie crust.
Hmm.
yeah, exactly. Or otherwise, you're just handling it too much, and
Yeah.
it's just gummy and yeah.
Yeah. Gummy and greasy. Gross.
Oh,
Hmm.
nobody wants gummy and greasy in their pies
No,
or
no,
any baking, really.
or anything really.
Baking or cooking? No go.
Oh, that's so hard. Baking and cooking.
Hmm. The
Oh,
two
okay. Well, I'm gonna
together.
have to go with baking. But like it's just like 51% baking,
Hmm.
49% cooking. Like I really love the two. Yeah.
Yeah, because you present most of your bakes, but you also really seem
Yeah.
to enjoy like sharing your dinners and stuff like that that you're making for your
Hmm.
family. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love cooking too.
I share all my baking, but I do share my cooking and typically with my family, I'm cooking more, right?
Hmm.
Like I'm cooking everybody's meals and snacks and stuff like that. Whereas baking, that's more so typically, my job. So it's
Yes.
a, a work thing
Hmm.
Right.
versus an
Right.
everyday, we have to eat thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fair
exactly.
enough.
All right, tea or
Okay.
coffee?
Coffee, but decaf.
Mm.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
And do you take anything in your coffee or just black?
Yes. Almond milk.
Hmm.
I'm like super bougie, special flavored stuff, like any kind of
The
fun
special flavored
flavoring,
ones, yeah.
salted caramel,
Ah.
lavender. I had a maple bourbon
Mm.
That sounds
syrup
so
kind of thing,
good.
and it was phenomenal. Oh,
Oh, that sounds
That
amazing.
so
does
good.
sound
So good. Yeah.
very good.
It does.
Okay. Swiss meringue or American buttercream?
American buttercream, 1000%.
Hmm.
You're going to find with Swiss meringue, it's totally doable with dairy free. It's delicious. But again, with the
Mm.
softness factor, it's really, really soft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really just love American buttercream.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
And I've actually made a vegan Swiss meringue with a vegan meringue powder, and it actually works really, really well. And using the Becel, it's actually brilliant.
I've never actually experimented with a vegan meringue powder
Ah,
before.
okay.
So I should add that to my
We
list.
can
Yeah,
chat.
definitely
Yeah.
try that.
Done.
That sounds like a great idea.
Sounds good.
Okay, now here's the question of all questions. Butter tarts, raisins or no raisins?
Raisins, all the raisins. Give me all the raisins.
I'm just
I'm not sure I know. I'm not sure I know how Katie feels about raisins and butter tarts here.
Oh my gosh, Katie, did you see our episode where I discovered that I like raisins and
I'm still processing it. I'm still processing it.
butter? 2 against 1 now.
You have to have raisins in butter tarts. It's just like
Okay.
I think it should be a rule. In fact, we should maybe even make it a law. I don't know.
Well, we would have quite a few people who would not like that as a law, but
I know. I think we're probably in the minority, Lisa.
No, it's actually when we did our poll,
yeah.
it's about 50-50. And people were very, very, what's the word I'm looking for?
Divided.
They had a lot of conviction.
Yes. It's like pineapple on pizza.
Yes.
People either are for it or against it. There's not any middle ground.
Okay,
They are one or the other.
I'm a pineapple
I
on
like
pizza kind of
pineapple.
gal.
Okay, yay!
So good.
3 thumbs
That
up.
sweet savory. That sweet savory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the sweet and savory, the salty sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
But I do like currants in butter tarts.
But they don't barely even taste different than raisins.
No, they're very different. It's a texture thing because the currants
Okay.
are smaller and they
They're
tend to
smaller,
have a
a
little
little
bit more
tighter.
texture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you tried cranberries in your butter tarts?
No, I have not.
They're actually a really delicious little tart twist
Hmm.
against like the very sweet richness of the butter tart. You
Hey,
might like that too.
Katie,
I think I will
you
try
come
that one day.
down. You
Okay.
come either to my
Thank you.
place or to Christina's place. We
Okay.
will do this whole like butter tart thing where we try making a bunch of different varieties of butter tarts and then basically canvass the neighborhood and see what they think.
Okay, that
Wouldn't
would
it?
actually
It
be
would.
so much fun, wouldn't it?
Yes, we're going to take it to the street actually. We're going to bake like
Yes.
maybe 3 or 4 different varieties of butter tarts and then we're going to actually literally take it to the streets and hand them out and get people's feedback on them.
I am
All right.
100% in. Count me in. I will be there bringing all my raisins and ready.
Can't wait. Awesome. Awesome. All right.
I love it. I
Well,
love
that's
it.
it for our little game of this or that. And we have 3 minutes left for you, Katie,
That was
to give us your baking scrap for our listeners.
So I thought about this, my baking scrap. Now, I'm going to kind of like put a little twist on
Okay.
the idea of this because it's not really like a tip or a trick. It's
Okay,
just
love it.
maybe a piece of advice.
Perfect.
So, for gluten-free baking, if you are starting on a new journey, if you are baking for a celiac, a gluten-free friend, family, anybody, be so patient with yourself. Give yourself so much grace. Be prepared that the first handful might be flops. And it's okay because you're going to learn, you're going to get better, and you'll get there. But like, just be kind to yourself. It's okay. Because even literally the most experienced bakers, I have been baking for years. And it took me like a solid 6 months before I was like, okay, I think I kind of know what I'm doing now. Like it takes time. So just give yourself grace. You'll get
That
there.
is excellent.
That's it.
I think that's a fabulous piece of advice for any baking at all, and a great piece of life advice, to be honest with you. I think giving ourselves a little bit of grace in any situation, I think, is so important to do that. And the other thing is, another piece of advice that I'll give is if they are starting on this gluten-free journey, certainly check out Cake by Katie, and she will make it a whole lot easier for you. Just follow her recipes and you'll be good as gold. And the other part as well is the people that you are baking for will so very much appreciate all the extra effort and love that you put into your gluten-free bakes as well. So you can never go wrong with any of that. So
absolutely, it's the heart in it that matters the most, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And you have so much heart and
Heart of gold.
and generosity, Katie, and we cannot thank you enough for taking the time to share all of your amazing information that you did today. Seriously, so many great nuggets of gold in today's podcast. So thank you for that. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate you so much.
Oh, you ladies, I love both of you very much, and thank you for having me here. And that's it, I guess. But love you guys, and you're just a joy to sit and chat with and laugh and talk baking about.
So
we love
much.
you so much
love
too.
You lots, Katie.
Thank
Have a
you.
wonderful rest of your day.
All right.
Okay. Bye.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Mwah.
Oh, that was such a great conversation with Katie.
Oh my goodness, she is such a sweetheart. I have loved Katie for so long, and it's so cool that we have that connection, and that's the power of social media as well. Is when we're getting chatting, she was off to a wedding in Summerland, and I'm like, Summerland? Well, that's where my in-laws are from. I gave her my background, and she's like, no freaking way. My grandparents were their next door neighbors. Like what are the
That's the
what are the
craziest
chances?
thing. And she actually lives in the town where my puppy Mochi came from, where she was born.
Ah, there you go.
That's
Another
kind of
connection.
funny.
So it's like
Yeah,
the
another
1
connection.
degree of separation. The Kevin Bacon
Yeah,
1 degree of
we really
separation.
6 degrees, yeah, we really don't have a lot of degrees of separation. It's quite funny
Yeah,
because 'cause you'd think that the one thing that ties us together is just the baking thing, and somehow we meet on social media and end up finding all these different connections, and it's just
it
amazing. But
really,
she's
really
just
is.
so lovely, and I'm so grateful that she took her time to spend with us
Oh,
and give all those tips and tricks for gluten-free baking and answered all my very excited questions.
and a lot of our listeners' questions as well. Like when we ran that segment on our Instagram page about just ask us
Mhm.
anything, we actually had quite a number of questions all around gluten-free baking specifically. And so it's very timely that
Yeah.
Katie was able to find some time in her schedule to join us to chat about that. And some of the tips that she did give us are invaluable, like that piece of bread with your
Mhm.
gluten-free bakes, your
Yes.
cookies and cake and all that kind of stuff to keep it moist. Like, who would have thunk it? Even just for that piece alone, I think worth the price of admission for today's episode.
And now if people didn't get answers to the questions that they have about gluten-free, dairy-free, vegan baking, they at least know that they can go to Caked by Katie on Instagram and they'll be able to find those answers. And uh, failing anything else, they could just look at her recipes and
Mhm.
just they work every time.
Oh,
They're amazing.
they're
She's so
fantastic.
good.
And she is such a gracious and generous person as well
Mhm.
that I'm sure that if people had really specific questions about gluten free, she'd be happy to answer them through DMs
Yeah.
on her platform.
Well, thank you for joining me for this episode and for this little wrap up. That I've been kind of sick today, as you can probably hear, and as you can definitely see. But I'm really glad that we kind of reconvened after our interview with Katie to be able to just revel in what a lovely person she is,
Oh,
and the fact that we got to spend some time chatting with her.
I could have talked to her all day long. She was such a sweetheart.
100%,
So, yeah. And
and we
hopefully
will
we'll have
when she
her.
comes down to visit.
Well, I am so looking forward to that butter tart challenge. We
Yeah,
need to come up with like a
it'll be great.
snappy little name for it.
A snappy name.
So if
Hey,
anybody,
somebody out there. Yeah. Tell
exactly,
us, what do you think it should be called?
exactly. Still
The
haven't heard
butter
anybody from
challenge.
anybody about Taylor Swift tickets though. Remember we did that call out
Yeah,
for
really.
Gavin, and nobody's come
Yeah,
through
but
on that yet.
I mean, it's only been a week, so we'll have to see. Thanks for joining us,
Thank you for joining us, everyone. We really appreciate it. And if you
and we'll
guys have
see you.
feedback for us on what we could be doing better, we're just newbies here, learning along the way. So please feel free to send us all your suggestions, who you might like to see as a guest in the
Yeah.
future. If you would like to be a guest on our show, if you're listening,
Mhm.
anyone, let us know. We are
Let us
happy to
know.
have you.
Yep, we're looking forward to next week's podcast, and we're very excited to have all the feedback from all of you. So thank you so much for listening, and have a great night.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.